Hi everybody! In this video I'll tell you about my trip to Gran Canaria, one of the Canary Islands, its most interesting natural attractions, the most breathtaking locations, the weather on the island in February-March, and I'll give travelers some useful tips and recommendations. The Canary Islands are an archipelago of seven large and several small volcanic islands in the Atlantic Ocean, not far from the northwest coast of Africa. Yes, just 200 kilometers from Morocco and Western Sahara. The islands belong to Spain. Gran Canaria is the third largest island in the archipelago after Tenerife and Fuerteventura. Its area is over 1500 square kilometers, and it's the second among the Canary Islands in terms of population. Gran-Canaria has a round shape and the diameter of the island is just about 45 kilometers. When we decided to go to Canary Islands, we spent a long time choosing between Gran Canaria and Tenerife. And we chose, right, both. I've also made a video about Tenerife. Here is the link. In my opinion, if your goal is to see the island quickly, you can do it in about 4 days. But of course, visiting the beaches, you might want to stay longer. A few words about the weather in February. If you haven't been to the islands yet, the weather forecasts can be quite confusing. For example, when I was getting prepared for the trip, one mobile app showed that it was around 20 degrees Celsius during the day and 16-17 degrees Celsius at night, while another one showed that it was 13-15 degrees Celsius during the day and down to 7 degrees at night. Meanwhile, the internet describes the islands as the islands of eternal spring, where even the water temperature never drops below 20 degrees Celsius all year round. So, what shall we do? Should we take a warm jacket, or shorts, swimming suits, and sunscreen? And the answer is if you want to explore the island without limiting yourself to just the beach, take everything. The islands are mountainous, so the climate and the weather are influenced by altitude and terrain. And Gran Canaria is one of the highest islands in the archipelago. They say that the Canaries are miniature continents. The climate changes significantly from the sea level on the coast, where the temperature, even in winter, is almost always around 20 degrees Celsius, to the heights of 2 kilometers and more, where you can sometimes see snow, even in summer. So here it becomes clear why the weather forecasts vary so much. So if you are planning to venture a bit into the mountains to see the island from viewpoints above the clouds, and maybe even ride a motorbike on the mountain serpentines, you might really need some warm clothing. Down below it can get quite chilly as well on windy rainy days. It's still winter after all, but you'll also want to pack a swimsuit and sunscreen, and when the sun appears it can get quite hot and it will be really hard to resist the local beaches. As soon as the weather improves, the deserted winter beaches transform into bustling summer spots with sun loungers and plenty of vacationers. Even on cloudy days there are always some people swimming in the ocean and surfing the waves. Actually, Canary Islands are very popular with surfers because of those perfect Atlantic waves. In the center of the island, the landscape is mostly mountainous. It's a volcano, you do remember, right? The southern part of the island has a dry climate, while the northern part is more humid. The dryness of the south is getting even worse with the winds from the Sahara Desert, which carry dust and sand from there. Sometimes those winds lead to sandstorms, with temperatures rising up to 50 degrees Celsius. The capital of Gran Canaria is one of the two capitals of the Canary Islands. It's Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, and there we stayed in the Hotel Verrol with a great location. Here is my review. The first day of our trip was rainy, so we just strolled along the promenades of the beaches Playa de las Canteras and Playa de los Muellitos, enjoying the views of the ocean, the amazing waves, and surfers. We made our way to the Music Palace and discovered a nice shopping center there. We also spent a day looking for a rental car, unsuccessfully. Here is the first important recommendation. Take care of renting a car or a bike in advance, or you might end up with nothing, or like us, almost nothing. There are plenty of rental spots around, but they all had full bookings. The prices at the airports are astronomical. After much effort, we found a motorcycle for 32 euros a day with a 200 euro deposit. The same goes for hotels. Book in advance. While it was raining, we had nothing better to do than visit some indoors attractions. So we went to the Museum of Science and Technology. We liked the museum, even us, two adult skeptics. If it weren't for the rainy day, we might not have noticed it, but we ended up spending very nice 3 hours there. You can go with children. I would recommend from at least 8 years old, or without, and you'll be fine if you have a curious nature. Here you can sit in a fighter jet in a passenger airplane cockpit, experience the laws of physics, play with the model of a black hole, take photos, jump in a ball pool, and even listen to a lecture in Spanish at the planetarium. We also made it to the city's landmark, the Cathedral of Santa Ana, where for a couple of euros you can go up and enjoy a stunning view of the city and the ocean. The next day, we took our bike and headed to the mountains to see the local natural attractions. The roads there are serpentines, narrow and winding, sometimes with steep slopes. Make sure your vehicle can handle it. To be honest, I was a bit scared on the motorcycle. It's definitely more comfortable in a car, but of course, there is a certain romance in it. So, Gran Canaria is a volcanic island, and if you look at it from above, you'll clearly see a volcano that has risen from the sea. But don't worry, the last eruptions occurred about 3,500 years ago. The same story goes for the other Canary Islands. The highest points of the islands are indeed the tops of the volcanoes. Therefore, you will notice black rocks and sand everywhere, which are essentially pieces of hardened lava. Let's move on to the first and one of the main attractions in the center of the island, the highest point, or almost the highest point of the island, the summit of the volcano Pico de las Nieves. The drive here from Las Palmas took us about an hour. We simply built the route in Google Maps. Sometimes they led us onto very questionable roads, which the bike barely managed to climb, and I was scared about what else awaited us along the way. But eventually we made it. On our way, we stopped a few times to admire some gorgeous views of the island. For a long time, it was believed that the highest point was Pico de las Nieves. Its height above the sea level is around 2 kilometers. However, it was recently discovered that a much less known neighboring peak, I can't pronounce its name, sorry, is a few meters taller. Pico de las Nieves literally translates to a snowy peak. In winter, the summit is often covered in snow, hence the name. By the way, some tourists conquer the mountain on foot. The view from here is just stunning. The next most popular natural attraction is Roque Nublo. This volcanic rock, standing at 1,813 meters above the sea level, is considered one of the symbols of Gran Canaria. Roque Nublo is the third highest point on the island, formed as a result of the volcanic eruption about 4.5 million years ago. It's a natural spire formed from the breakup of large rock fragments, 60 meters tall, resembling a finger pointing to the sky. The indigenous people of Gran Canaria, the Guanches, regarded the spire of Roque Nublo as a sacred pillar of the sky. It served as a ritual site where they made sacrifices to the god of the sun. Please keep in mind that you will need to walk about 1 kilometer to reach the rock along not very convenient paths. Comfortable shoes are a must here. Roque Nublo and Pico de las Nieves are located not far from each other, about 20-minute drive. If you want to grab a snack or even have a proper lunch, there is a nice restaurant nearby, about 10-minute drive. We had a grill, which was actually grilled meat of different kinds for two persons, for 28 euros. The grill was so big, we couldn't finish it all. Plan your time, remember that you'll be going back with all the same winding roads, and you might not want to drive those roads in the dark. Also, it might be worth downloading maps to your phone in advance, as sometimes the network can drop. Next, we headed to see the Maspalomas Dunes. The idea was to catch them at sunset, but on the way we couldn't resist stopping at another stunning viewpoint, Astronomico. So we reached the dunes after the sun had already set behind the horizon, but it was still beautiful. Maspalomas is a city located in the southern part of Gran Canaria. It's the largest tourist area in the Canary Islands. Looking at the dunes, you easily understand which direction Africa is, and indeed, the island is just 210 kilometers from the northwest coast of Africa. Remember, I mentioned the sandstorms that carry heat and sand from Africa? Experienced tourists also recommend to visit the Playa de Anadores, one of the most beautiful beaches on the island. The return trip to the city of Las Palmas was on the highway with strong winds. It was a bad idea to do that on the bike. The next day we headed to Tenerife by ferry from Las Palmas for 65 euros per person. We could have taken a ferry from another port for 43 euros, but we didn't want to waste time going there by public transport. The ferry was almost empty, probably because of low season, so it rocked on the waves. If you feel you might be seasick, be sure to bring some medication as the trip lasts 1 hour and a half. Alternatively, you could fly. Just buy tickets in advance. They are usually not available on the day of travel. I hope you enjoyed the video and I was able to convey my admiration for the beauty of the island. Please like, subscribe to my channel, and see you soon!